This is Greg Troutwine with Maritime Reporter TV. We're here at the North Shipping 2017 in Oslo, and we're very pleased to be joined by Clarke, the chairman of the Vancouver International Maritime Center. And Mr. Clarke, just to start things off, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
To start, I'm sure many of our viewers, many of our readers know full well about the Vancouver International Maritime Center. But for those who are perhaps uninitiated, can you just give a concise description of the organization and the current initiative?
Yeah, the organization is quite compact. We have a board of directors. We're funded by the federal and provincial governments. Our main purpose is to attract the management and intellectual capacity of companies to Vancouver. We usually encourage the startup of branch offices. We have a very diversified city. It's on the Pacific Rim, so it looks at the market that's most likely to grow in the next 20 years. DNVGL forecasts that the North Pacific corridor is going to be the fastest growing in the next 15 years or so. In terms of ton miles, I guess West Africa to Asia would be slightly higher, but in absolute terms, the biggest growth is in the North Pacific. And, we have both a large port, the most diversified port in North America. Canada is an export nation. Both levels of government recognize that as an open economy that relies on exports, ships are an essential element of that.
Well, as I was discussing before we started this, Vancouver is one of my favorite cities. It's a beautiful place to visit, and I know you have many salient points that you're trying to get across to the companies looking to move there. But starting with one, you discussed the quality of life. What is it specifically about the quality of life about Vancouver that some of these companies in the maritime sector are finding interesting?
I think quality is one of those qualities that's very hard to pin down. But generally speaking, we have a very diverse, cosmopolitan population. We're a world city. We have North America's best airport. It's won that the last 10 years in a row. We're directly connected to most of the world's capitals, and we're an outdoor city. We're a very temperate city. We don't have severe winters nor excessively hot summers, and we have everything from fine dining to fine living. Lots of parks, but most specifically, we have a very business-friendly environment. Both the federal and provincial governments are all in on that. And of course, we as practitioners of business in the private sector, we want to encourage more and more people that think like we do.
There are some very tangible benefits for maritime companies doing business in Vancouver. You had mentioned a couple of them previously regarding the taxes. When you are talking about the business-friendly environment, what specifically would shipping companies and maritime companies find attractive?
Well, number one, all levels of government recognize the importance of international shipping, as I mentioned earlier, because we're an open economy and we rely on exports. So you can imagine that if the government supports it, that doesn't necessarily mean it's good, but it does mean you don't have the government against you. The fact that we're here at this wonderful event, North Shipping, shows that we're rolling the red carpet out. We have a whole bunch of new companies that have arrived in the last couple of years. We have over 50 in the pipeline that are going to come soon. It's growing part of the quaternary sector, which is the supply and service sector that is so important to to the maritime industry. We have service providers like law firms that are worldwide names who have offices in Vancouver. We've got insurance. We're working on finance. It's not where we want it, but it's coming. And all of the other support systems that ship owners need, they can find in Vancouver. And we're fond of saying that if you open a branch office in Vancouver, your company pays zero taxes on your worldwide income, not even tonnage taxes. If you're registered in the Marshals and you want to pay tonnage tax there's nothing in our regulations that says you can't, but you don't have to pay anything to do business in Canada.
Obviously, this has been a bit of a challenging market over the last few years, but I know you've made some really good headway, as you mentioned, with attracting some top maritime companies to your sector. I guess, can you discuss the market in general as you see it, but I guess what can we be expecting from Vancouver International Maritime Center in the coming year or so to further your initiative?
Well, of course, we're looking for opportunities to exploit. In order to do that, you have to go into markets like we're doing here, and you have to be sensitive to what's happening in those markets. And since 2008, it's been a perfect storm for shipping. And if you're trying to encourage people to move, one of the last things on your expense pro forma is moving when you're fighting to stay alive. And we note that the production of oil is going to drop from 1.6 million barrels a day to 1.4 in this current year, yet the tanker supply is growing. So at the time of falling freight, you've got rising supply of tonnage. So that's not good for the tanker industry. But I think, in the future, it has a bright spot, and that's in the east. So, particularly on the eastern seaboard of Asia, I think there'll be quite a bit of growth. But for that very same market, the bulk carriers, although they've been in the tank since 2008, are showing signs of resilience. Cape-size vessels are, up to about 20,000 a day, and it's looking like that's a sustainable price. And in fact, those freight rates, if you're an optimist, as all ship owners have to be, there's some probability that will actually raise. The containers, that's been a struggle. There's a little more capacity than is needed. And of course, Hanjin went bankrupt, but with the consolidations of Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd and the Japanese companies, I think efficiencies are going to happen, and I think there's some optimism on the horizon for container ships. And in the Port of Vancouver, between now and the next 8 years, we're going to double capacity to 6 million TEUs. So we're ready for the growth when it comes.
You've been very informative and gracious with your time. Again, I thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Greg. Nice to be here.
This is Greg Trautwein with Maritime Reporter TV.